I suspect that what God is detecting in David is at least a wee bit of an edge of hinting, of at least suggesting that David is almost doing God a favor. And you never, ever, ever make growth in spiritual progress by thinking you're doing God a favor. You are always a debtor to grace. Always. You see, clearly there is some part of David that's thinking by building a whopping big temple, David will make God's name great. God says that's not the way it works either. I make your name great. This is part of a bigger doctrine in Scripture. The Puritans called it the doctrine of the Aseity of God. It's an old English word that nobody uses much anymore. A-S-E-I-T-Y, aseity. It's from the Latin ase, which means from himself. What it means is that God is so much from himself that he's not dependent on anybody. I'm not from myself, I'm from my mommy and daddy. And in fact, in broader senses than biological, I'm from all the people that have shaped me and all the influences upon me and my heritage and where I was born and how I was brought up and the experiences that have befallen me and the number of times I've been in hospital and to whom I'm married. I'm not from myself. But God is so much from himself that he doesn't need us. That's what the doctrine of aseity is. He doesn't need us. That's made explicit in many passages. It's one of the doctrines that Paul expounds when he's preaching to pagans in Acts 17 in Athens. Do you see, pagan religion has all of these finite gods. And they've got their own passions and their own corruptions and their own needs. So that pagan religion is essentially a matter of swapping. You scratch the god's back and then the god pleases you somehow. He blesses you. You want a safe sea voyage, so you try and do something nice for Neptune, and then maybe you'll have a nice sea voyage. You're going to give a speech, so you want to scratch the back of Mercury in the Roman system, Hermes in the Greek system, because he's the god of communication. Do you see? You scratch my back, I scratch your back. That's the way religion works. God help us, there's some Christians who think that's the way religion works too. I'll just have my devotions, and then maybe God will give me a really good day. I won't get fired. God, I've witnessed to at least 15 people in the last 6 months. Why should I get cancer? This is bizarre. God doesn't need you. Certainly doesn't need me. Do you know what? God doesn't need our worship. In eternity past, he was perfectly happy. You mustn't picture God coming to Thursday afternoon rather late saying, boy, I can hardly wait till Sunday. Wish they'd break out those guitars. Singing better be good this week. I'm a bit down. He doesn't need our worship. He doesn't need us. He's the God of aseity. So how are you going to go to God and do something that makes him great? He is what he is. He's perfectly great. He's perfectly happy. He's perfectly content. Now, don't misunderstand. I am not saying that God is impersonal. I am not saying that God does not interact with us. I am not saying that God may get angry with us. I am not saying that God may pour out his love on people from the foundation of the earth. I'm not saying any of those things. God is personal and interacts with us. But never, ever, ever because he has some deep, deep needs that he has to meet. He doesn't need us. If he does these things, it's because of his choice out of the perfection of all of his attributes. Not because he's sort of needy like the pagan gods and has to be swapped with various things in order to meet his needs. So if you begin to approach God with a kind of stance that says, well, you've made me king. I'm so grateful. Now I'm going to do you a favor. I'll build you a temple. You're already diminishing God. So if you have a lot of money and you say, well, God, you've blessed me with a lot of money. That's a good thing. Now, I'm going to do you a favor too. God have mercy on your soul. After all, God owns it all anyway. It's true that God has enabled you to get the money, but you can't give it to him as if you're doing him a favor. You're doing it rather because He's God, and you're thankful for redemption, and you want to help his people, and you want to prosper the gospel, and it's all his in any case, and it's a privilege to serve, but never because you're doing God a favor. That's paganism, don't you see?